The last thing I ever wanted was to be back in a courtroom. After 3 decades of legal battles, I'd finally traded in my briefcase for peace and quiet on my ranch. But as I sat across from Karen Whitfield that Tuesday morning, I knew some people just couldn't help but drag you back into the fight. Karen sat there, perfectly composed in her tailored power suit, whispering to her young lawyer like the outcome was already decided. She thought she was about to put the stubborn old rancher in his place. What she didn't know was that this stubborn old rancher had spent 35 years dismantling cases exactly like hers. When Judge Morrison called the case to order and asked if I had legal counsel, I stood and straightened my tie. "Your Honor, I'll be representing myself." Across the room, Karen's lawyer, a kid named Bradley Cooper, smirked. "Poor guy." "Very well," the judge nodded. "State your qualifications." I cleared my throat. Thomas Mitchell, retired attorney, 35 years with Mitchell and Associates, specialized in property law and civil litigation, state bar member since 1987. The smirk vanished. Karen's jaw slackened just long enough for me to notice. Cedar Ridge Ranch was supposed to be my escape after decades of courtroom showdowns and endless corporate negotiations. I bought the 100-acre property for its isolation. No neighbors, no HOA rules, just me, my horses, and the occasional visit from my grandkids. Old Jim Henderson, the previous owner, made one thing very clear before handing over the deed: the land had never been part of any homeowners association. The nearest subdivision, Willowbrook Estates, was 2 miles away, with county land and my property line in between. For a year, life was quiet. Then Karen Whitfield became HOA president. I met her one October morning while repairing a fence. A shiny white Lexus pulled up to my gate, and out stepped Karen, mid-50s, perfectly styled hair, clipboard in hand, walking like she owned the place. "Excuse me," she called, sharp and demanding, "we need to talk about community trail access." I set down my hammer and approached, keeping the gate between us. "Can I help you?" "I'm Karen Whitfield, president of the Willowbrook Estates HOA," she announced proudly. "We're implementing a new trail system and need to establish an easement through your property." I nearly laughed. "Ma'am, this ranch isn't part of Willowbrook Estates." Her smile tightened. "That's what we need to discuss. The community decided interconnected trails will benefit everyone, raise property values, promote healthy living." "Nice for your community," I replied, "but this property isn't included." She tapped her clipboard. "Mr. Mitchell, I don't think you understand. When something benefits the greater good, individual holdouts can't block progress." That's when I knew she was trouble. "I understand perfectly. The answer is no. Have a nice day." I turned back to my fence as her huff and car door slam echoed behind me. The next 6 months were like a slow-motion headache. First came the letters on official HOA letterhead, demanding my presence at board meetings I had no obligation to attend. Then, false complaints to the county about imaginary code violations. Inspectors came, shook their heads, left. She organized neighborhood walks where groups gathered at my property line, pointing and snapping photos like I was some zoo exhibit. But the real turning point came in April. I arrived at my back gate to find a padlock cut and tire tracks leading onto my land. Trail markers had been hammered into trees along my private road. I spent the afternoon removing them and installing security cameras. The footage was clear as day. At 2 a.m. the following Tuesday, there was Karen, bolt cutters in hand, sneaking onto my property with 2 HOA board members, planting more trail markers like they owned the place. The next morning, I had a welding crew install a steel gate with concrete posts. I also had my attorney send Karen and the HOA board a cease and desist letter. But Karen wasn't the type to back down. A week later, a lawsuit arrived. Karen and the Willowbrook Estates HOA were suing me for malicious obstruction of community resources, interference with easements, and creating a public nuisance. They wanted me to tear down my gates, pay $50,000 in damages, and cover their legal fees. I read through the complaint twice, amused at the desperation, historical use, implied easements, alleged public access rights. It was pure fiction. But it required a response. So I dusted off my bar license. No point paying another lawyer when I could handle this myself. I filed my answer, denied all allegations, and asserted counterclaims for trespass, harassment, and defamation. Tuesday's hearing was the beginning of the end for Karen. She arrived with her entourage, her lawyer, 2 board members, and someone scribbling notes for their HOA newsletter. She even wore a little HOA president pin, like it granted her authority in a court of law. Judge Morrison, sharp as ever, presided. It had been years since I last stood in her courtroom, but when I stated my credentials, recognition flashed in her eyes. "Mr. Mitchell," she said with a knowing smile, "welcome back." Bradley Cooper launched into his opening statement, painting me as a bitter recluse preventing families from enjoying nature. He claimed the trails had existed for decades, that I was holding the community hostage, and that Karen was just trying to serve her neighbors. When it was my turn, I kept it simple. "Your Honor, here's the original deed from 1952, my 2021 purchase survey, and sworn affidavits from the previous 3 owners. No easement has ever existed. This property was never part of any HOA. There has never been public access." I laid the documents on the table as Cooper's confidence visibly cracked. Furthermore, I continued, producing a manila folder, "I have security footage showing Ms. Whitfield trespassing on my property 6 separate times, cutting locks, installing unauthorized trail markers." I handed the judge printed stills from the footage. "I also have 17 harassing letters, 9 false complaints to county agencies, and proof of a coordinated campaign to damage my reputation." Judge Morrison's eyes narrowed as she examined the evidence. "Ms. Whitfield, is this you in these photos?" Karen's face flushed deep pink. "That's taken out of context," she stammered. "The community needed those trails." "So you admit trespassing?" the judge asked. Cooper scrambled to his feet. "Your Honor, my client acted under a good faith belief that easements existed." I nearly smiled. "Your Honor," I interrupted, "Defense Exhibit C, a recorded phone call where Ms. Whitfield clearly states, 'I don't care if he owns it, we'll make his life hell until he gives in.'" The courtroom went dead silent. Karen gasped. "That was private. Recorded from my property," I replied calmly. "Your voice carried over my fence during one of your gatherings. Single-party consent state. Completely legal." Cooper fumbled for arguments, but the damage was done. Judge Morrison cut to the chase. "Counselor, do you have any actual evidence of an easement?" He shuffled papers desperately. "We're still investigating historical records." "So, no," the judge concluded. "Mr. Mitchell, do you wish to proceed with your counterclaims?" "I do. I'm seeking damages, legal fees, and a permanent restraining order." Karen stood abruptly. "You can't do this. I'm the HOA president." The judge's gavel slammed. "Ms. Whitfield, sit down, or I'll hold you in contempt." Turning to me, she nodded. "Your evidence is substantial. I'm granting summary judgment in your favor." The next 20 minutes were brutal. The judge dismissed Karen's claims with prejudice, granted all my counterclaims, and ordered her to pay $15,000 in damages, $5,000 in legal fees, and stay 500 feet away from my property. But the final blow was yet to come. "Ms. Whitfield," the judge continued, "I'm forwarding this to the district attorney for potential criminal trespass charges and notifying the HOA board." Karen's face collapsed. 3 days later, I received a letter. Karen had been unanimously removed from the board and banned for life. 2 months after that, she pleaded guilty to misdemeanor trespass, 12 months probation, 500 hours of community service. The best part? 6 months later, I was invited to speak at the state law school's continuing education series. My topic, When Karens Attack, a case study in HOA overreach. Our case went viral on legal websites. Karen, last I heard, moved 3 states away, working as a receptionist. Her house sold at a loss. The new HOA board sent me an apology letter and a fruit basket. Her dreams of HOA power crushed under the weight of legal fees, a criminal record, and a cautionary tale now taught to every law student in the state. If watching HOA bullies get what they deserve gives you as much satisfaction as it gives me, go ahead and hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe for more stories where the good guys stand their ground and win.